Okay, we're going to do a proof with quantifiers here, and it's a pretty simple one, but it illustrates a few points. So I'm going to try to talk through a few of the things that you want to notice in proofs like this. So the first thing that we notice, right, we're going to go to the conclusion or the goal. This is where we want to go every time, right? This is what we're trying to prove from from the premises. So first thing to notice, there's a conditional. Right? So you know what kind of proof that you want to use. That's going to be a conditional proof. We're going to use CP. And let's point out, okay, so there's two different quantifiers. And what we want to point out here is the scope of each quantifier. All right, so here is a universal quantifier. Its scope is just here in the antecedent. All right, it's saying this right here is the only thing that it quantifies over. All right, and then there's a conditional. And then there's another quantifier, and its scope is just the consequent. Okay, so you have a conditional here. Left side or the antecedent has one universal quantifier, and it's quantifying over just this right here. Here's the scope. Separately, you have this quantifier, and it's quantifying over this right here. All right, and over here, variable is z. Over here, the variable is z, is a universal quantifier, existential quantifier over here. All right, we're just getting the basics down right now. So it's saying if everything is g, then there's something that's f. There's something that's f. All right, so here, the reason I point that out is if this universal quantifier was quantifying over everything here, right, if there's parentheses right here and parentheses at the end of this, then we would have to prove it differently, all right? But here, the quantifier, the conditional here is the main operator, and that's what we're looking for in a conditional proof, all right? Here's the conditional. So we know we're gonna set up the conditional proof like we usually do, all right? So we're going to first do the next step, 3, and putting the antecedent here, the whole thing. So I'm just going to type that out. G, Z. Remember, that's our variable right there. And just to illustrate, I'm going to go down here because I know that the last step, I don't know what number it is yet, the last step is going to be this right here, the consequent. If this, then what? Oh, no. Then Z, FC. There's our consequent. If this, then that, and then down here, I know that my last step outside of the conditional proof is going to be just that conclusion right there. There's the goal. GZ, conditional, and remember $sign is on the keyboard. What does the existential quantifier? So I'm going to put that in. All right, so we just set up a conditional proof just like we always do. The only thing different from the ones we've done in the past is that it involves quantifiers. All right, so remember, that's just automatic. That's just setting it up. We haven't proved anything. We haven't really done anything with like the content of the proof. Okay, so let's look at it. All right, so I see everything is G right here. That's what this says. And right away, I'm noticing that I have already in step 3 the antecedent of the second premise, this. If this, then that. Well, I have this, so I'm going to get that. All right, so let's do that. We have modus ponens right there, right? That says if you have this, you can get that. Well, we do have this, so we're entitled to put that down, this antecedent. All right, so remember, still in the conditional proof. So let's put down that consequent. And we have, it's a little confusing when you do e's for the predicates as well, but all right, so, oh, I forgot to write my justification or my assumption in this case. Assume. I'm sure some of you were pointing that out already. All right, so for this, number 4, right, what did we use? We used the premise, line 2, and we used 3, and we did modus ponens on that, right? If this, then that. We have that, so we get that. Okay, good. Now, still in the conditional proof. Now, where are we going to go? All right, let's see here. We have this right here that we need to apply UI to, right? Universal instantiation, because there's a universal quantifier there. But I'm looking and I'm saying this right here I think is going to come into play. And I have this, right, that I need to play with in some regards, because I need to basically, so when you see this as a step, you should probably think, all right, I'm probably going to use EG to get to this step. And if I'm going to use EG to get to this step, I have to have a constant like FA or something like that to then apply EG to. And if you're confused on that, look at the rules. Look at EG. EG says if I go from I can go from a constant to a quantifier and a variable. That's what it says. So if I have FA, let's say, then I can put down there is an F. So in other words, if A is F, then there is something that's F. That's what that says. That's what that rule says. Okay, so I'm looking ahead here, and I know that's where I need to go. So I need a constant in there somewhere. And I also know, because I know my two rules with the conditions, that if I have a case where I want to do EI, which I think I want to do here, and UI, I always do EI first. And if you need to be reminded on the reasons for that, look at the EI rule in the notes and look at the conditions for EI. And remember the rule. It's always EI before UI. All right, so let me go through that again. I know that I want to apply UI to here, but I'm pretty sure I want to apply EI to this so that I can then apply EG somewhere down the line, or maybe it's going to be here. That's my thinking and my reasoning process right now. All right, I might be wrong at this point. So I'm going to do it, see what happens. And okay, so I'm going to apply EI to this. All right, so let's just pick A. I could have picked B or C. I'm going to pick A. So I'm going to apply EI to 4. All right, so I did 4, EI. And I'm going to see what happens as a result of this, because I'm doing EI before this application of UI. So if I do UI to number 1, to premise 1, what do I get? I'm going to use EA again, of course. So I'm going to do EA, conditional. And remember, I'm not changing this, right? This is a Z variable, and it only applies to the Z variables within the scope. Within the scope of this quantifier. This quantifier is quantifying over this whole thing, but only this variable can be changed from a variable to a constant. Okay, so I don't mess with this at all. This is X, not the same thing. Okay, so make sure that you are keeping track of your variables turning into constants in the same way. So I just leave this antecedent alone. I just drop it down. All right, so let's do that. X, parentheses, Fx. And what rule did I use? Or what step? Let's see, 1, and I used UI. Okay. So let's see what I have so far. Again, I'm just kind of applying rules here, seeing what happens. I have if EA, then this. All right, so I'm glad I did this first, EI before UI, because then I can get this using modus ponens. Again, simple rule, we learned that in one of the first rules that we learned for just proofs in general, even without quantifiers. So what I can do is I can get that antecedent, that consequent in this conditional above for 6. There we go. All right. If this, then that, I have this up here, so I can get that. And I used steps 5 and 6. And the rule that I used is modus ponens. Okay, now let's see what happens here. What do we want to do? All right, remember, this is where we want to get to in our conditional proof. So let's see. What I can do with this line 7 here is, remember the rule. I want to do EI, and here's why. Because if I do EI, then this constant here, I can then apply EG on it to get this different variable. But there's something that I need to remember with EI. Remember EI before UI. And that rule applies if you use the same constant. But for number 7, I'm going to use a different constant because it doesn't matter. All I need to do is have some constant where then I can just turn that into this variable here by EG. All right, here's what I mean. This is saying there's something that's F. I'm going to apply EI and say, well, F is B then. And I'm going to use the EI rule from 7. But I used B. All right, EI before UI when you're using the same constant. All right, and I used EI, but I used a different constant. All right, so I'm not violating any rule because I didn't use FA. If I used FA, this is no good because UI is above here using the same constant as this, and the rule is EI before UI. This is UI before EI. That's no good. So I'm using a different constant here. And again, all I need to do is just have some constant there that I can apply EG to in this conditional proof to get this consequent right here, and then conclude right here, prove that conclusion. Okay, so I can actually bring this up now because my next step is going to be what I want, this last step. If I have B is F, right? If this thing is F, then there's something that's F. That's the EG rule. Pretty straightforward. So I can apply to 8 the EG rule and get the variable that I want. Right? I went from here, there's something that's F, to here using EI, and then I went back to a variable. But it's the variable that I wanted, right? So this using X is not the same as what we want. So I had to figure out a way to get the right kind of variable that I wanted, and that was just applying EI to get a different constant, and then going back and applying EG to get the variable that I wanted. All right, so we just applied EG to 8, and that's the last step in our CP, right? Because it's the consequent to this conditional. Okay. And so our very last step says the conclusion that we want. If this, then that. And that's what we assumed this, and we got this right here. And how do we do it? Well, lines 3 to 9, we used CP. And if we did everything correctly, this should check out. There we go. No errors. All right, so illustrated a few things. We messed with some variables, some constants. We did a CP, and we talked about the scope of quantifiers. So that should get you started in how to do proofs like this on a basic level.